Last spring, the special election for House District 72 became a national cause celeb, a barometer of the national mood, one of a number of special elections across the country that tested voters where voters were at. In a stunning victory, and thanks in no small part to help from Republican women who crossed party lines, attorney Margaret Good beat James Buchanan, the son of the Congressman Vern Buchanan. But that was then. And this is now, and every House seat in Florida is up for grabs, and this time Margaret Good is running against the former occupant of the seat, former State Representative Ray Pilon, and we welcome you both to the trapezoid. Thank you. You've both been here before, so we're going to start with opening remarks, and Margaret, we're going to start with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray, and thank you everyone for watching tonight. My name is Margaret Good, and I'm here because I see this great divide between what Floridians actually want and what our legislature does for us. For 20 years, the Republicans have held Tallahassee, and Ray Pilon has been there for 6 of them. And what has that gotten us? It's gotten us polluted water, it's gotten us exacerbated red tide, it's gotten us underfunded public education, and it's gotten us millions of people without access to affordable health care. I want to change that. That's why I ran back in August, and that's why I'm here today. I promised to be a champion for the environment, and I voted against making it easier to develop wetlands. I said I promised that I would be a champion for our public education system, and in the legislature, I spoke out against the privatization of our public education system. I promised to be accessible and accountable, and in the 8 months since I've been in office, I've held 7 town halls and have moved the district office into the district for the first time in a decade. I have the energy and the commitment to serve this district, and at the end of the day, I'm going to do what's good for Florida families, what's good for our local economy, and what's good for the environment. And I would be honored to have your vote in November.
Ray.
Thank you, Ellen. It's good to be with you again. Hi, everybody. I'm Ray Pilon. And Ray Pilon has been a resident here since 1975. Involved in this community for as long as I can remember, not always as a politician. I raised my family here. I spent most of my 23 years in law enforcement with the Sarasota County Sheriff's Department. And it's just a wonderful feeling to know that my kids went to Sarasota schools, public schools by the way, and got a great education, went to a Florida university and are both living still in Florida and working. And I think that's very important to us in the future. Now, it's really easy to talk about what Ray did or didn't do when he was in the legislature, but if we have a chance a little later on, I'll put a little emphasis on what Ray really did in the environment, what he has accomplished through those years. I was only there 6 years. I left, and of course we had this special election because the person that got elected quit. So here we are, fast forward. I want to move Florida forward, not backwards. And if we elect my opponent, we will have higher taxes. They're about Medicare for all. We'll have more money for public schools, which I think we're going to have even as Republicans. And we can talk about what a private school is, and what a charter school is, and what a not-for-profit charter school is, and how we actually feel about those instead of talking in generalities. I got into office the first time to work for you. I want to work for you again and for this community. I'm dedicated to this community, and I belong to this community, and I want to serve you again. Ray Pilon.
All right, thank you both. Coming up, what will my first question to these candidates be? We'll find out in just a moment. Welcome back. Tonight, the 2 candidates fighting for House 72. We're doing a debate joined by State Representative Margaret Good and her Republican challenger, Ray Pilon. Every election when there is an incumbent is about whether that incumbent should keep their job or whether they should be fired. So, Ray, why should voters who just elected Margaret Good just a few months ago fire her already?
Well, it's just a matter of what you want as a voter and what you want as a citizen of Sarasota. I feel that her plan and her ideology is not what this community wanted when they elected me and when I defeated Keith Fitzgerald and when I defeated my other 2 Democrats. This is a very moderate community in a lot of respects, but we have a lot of very ultra-conservatives. The demographics here are wide. So I always prided myself on constituent response. So I have a record of constituent response, of responding to the community, and I don't want to go in the direction of tax and spend, and that's what the opposition party wants.
Margaret, why should voters allow you to keep your job?
Well, as we've seen firsthand over the last several months, a healthy environment is key to our economy and our way of life. If you look at what's happened over the past 8 years and the rollback of environmental protections, and you look at the way that Mr. Pilon voted, it's clear that you have two choices. We can move Florida forward, or we can get stuck in the toxic policies that Ray Pilon and the Republican Party started. And just let me give you two examples. Even as early as 1997, Mr. Pilon, Mr. Pilon opposed a plan to move Sarasota from septic to sewer along Philippi Creek. And if you look at what's happening right now in 2018 on those streets along Philippi Creek, we are just moving from septic to sewer. He also voted to roll back water quality standards that has allowed more fertilizer to go into our waterways. There's a clear difference here.
All right,
Let's talk about it.
We'll give you 30 seconds to rebut.
The rebuttal is that, first of all, name the bills that I voted against the septic, because I have in front of me $24,500,000 for the Donna Bay restoration, the Philippi Creek septic to sewer, the restoration, and the replacement that we put forward and got from the others. Now, if you're talking about big bills where you had to throw the baby out with the bathwater, that's different. Environmentally, we have a fertilizer ordinance. Doesn't help if nobody pays attention to it, and we've cleaned up the bay.
All right, I have to stop you there. We could continue on this subject if you'd like in our next segment. Welcome back tonight. The two candidates fighting for House 72, and they're debating tonight. Joining us is State Representative Margaret Good and her Republican challenger Ray Pilon. And Representative, you brought up the issue of red tide, which has really wreaked havoc on the Suncoast this summer. Also the green slide coming from Lake Okeechobee. So specifically, what would you do about it?
Well, there's going to be a long road to fix it, but before we can fix it, we need to look at what caused it. And we need to fund research, which we are currently doing, but we also need to look back at the policies that have led to this pollution. Because while red tide is naturally occurring, the nutrients that we are putting into our water supply is exacerbating it. And if you look at what the legislature has done over the past 8 years, and as I said, Mr. Pilon was there for a lot of these votes and voted with the Republican establishment 96% of the time. If you look at it, he voted to roll back septic tank inspections. That was a protection to make sure that we're not seeping sewage into our aquifer and into our water supply. He opposed the Land and Water Conservation Amendment, which overwhelmingly the voters supported and which is supposed to fund land preservation. So if you look at the things that have happened over the past decade that has gotten our environment into this crisis, you see a clear path. And the only way to deal with that is by changing the people that are making the decisions.
Ray, your party has controlled the legislature and the governor's office for many years now. Does your party bear some responsibility, and do you have any ideas how to fix it?
Of course. But first of all, you know, my favorite president was Ronald Reagan. And when an opponent would do this to him, he would turn to them and say, "There you go again." Well, there you go again, Margaret. Name me the bills, name me the circumstances, name me why we did the septic tanks, because the Senate wouldn't do it. Name all those things. You can throw that stuff out there. But I can throw out there that when I wasn't in the legislature, $179 million for the Peace River Water Authority to build a 4 billion gallon reservoir on state land from Save Our Rivers. And not one bit of land mitigation had to be done. We restored wetlands. As I mentioned before, the septic to sewer, the NEP program when I was a commissioner, and that got our bay and our grasses back. So if you want, if we want to get into other topics, she was there for 8 months. She was only there from February 13th until the first week in March. So I'll match my votes against hers because she's got a lot of hard votes to make like that in the future. So, be specific, We can throw generalities all day. I can be specific.
All right, we have to take a quick break. We are just getting warmed up. Our House 72 debate continues in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, the two candidates fighting for House 72 debate. We are joined by State Representative Margaret Good and her Republican challenger, Ray Pilon. Ray, let me ask you this question, because you talked about your opponent here as a tax and spender, but the reality is Florida ranks dead last in spending on mental health. We rank dead last in the nation in terms of education, even in terms of funding for vets. We rank sixth to last. In some cases, don't we have to start spending the money? Because if you look at school shootings and mental health issues, they've caused so many problems over the years.
No argument. Here's the difference. I don't believe that we need any more taxes to do that. We have an 89, and she's even said this after I said it at Kona, but we have an $89 billion budget. We're going to have another $275 million in reserves. What I want to fight for this time is to make sure that we come back from those days of the recession when we had to cut so much, get our mental health community programs back in place, start these programs at a faster pace than we have been able to do before. I've always fought for that, didn't always win, but I fight for it because I fight for it in our community. The difference is I don't need a higher tax on corporate infrastructure. When that infrastructure or corporate companies, because that has been reduced at a rate at which it would not affect the income into the budget. The result of that has been that we've got more money to companies who then can hire more people, and then those people spend sales tax. The governor that she's supporting says he wants to raise it a big bunch. I'm not going to quote even how much it is. It's almost ridiculous. It would cost trillions of dollars to do that. Medicare for all, I don't think we need that. I don't think we can afford it. So if you want to talk about realities, yes, we have much more to do. Did we fail in some areas, especially in mental health? I was a huge supporter. I worked for coastal behavioral health care for years, as a matter of fact. That was a great program that has been underfunded, and I'm going to fight hard to make sure we get those dollars back.
Margaret?
So I think before we start talking about raising taxes, we need to look at our budget. We passed the largest budget in Florida history, but we are not funding, as you noted, we are not funding mental health programs. Our public education system is still underfunded, but we're spending almost $1 billion on these school vouchers that's siphoning money out of our public education system and to for-profit corporations. I believe that we have the money in the budget to do what's good for Florida. It's just a reprioritization.
So in other words, you disagree with your nominee that we should raise the corporate income tax, is that right?
I believe Andrew Gillum brings some really exciting ideas.
You didn't answer the question.
I believe that Andrew Gillum brings some really exciting ideas to the table, but on that one, I believe I'm physically conservative, and I believe that before we start looking at raising taxes, we need to look at our current budget.
Let's change the subject just a little bit, because you mentioned education and charter schools and so forth. There was a recent report that came out from a nonprofit organization called Integrity Florida, that the state record showed that 373 charter schools have closed since 1998 in Florida, and worst, it says there are hidden costs, represent corporate for-profit taxpayer scams that look more like corporate welfare than public education. Margaret, is it time to scale back our programs for charter schools in Florida?
It's past time. Now, Sarasota has some really great community-based nonprofit charter schools. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is these corporations that come into communities. We are paying for their infrastructure with our tax dollars, but then they can shut down and they sell the land and they keep the money. It's not right. They're not being held accountable to our public education. There's no or very little state oversight. And we are using that money to fund them instead of investing in our public education.
Same question to you, Ray.
Yeah, exactly. We actually agree on that. I have fought adamantly against my own party on for-profit schools, charter schools, especially when it comes to PICO dollars. Those are the capital dollars for their infrastructure. They should be private schools. How this got out of control, I can tell you based on previous leadership. But the leadership that's coming in this time, into the House is completely different, and we're going to take another look at that. I'm going to fight hard to make sure that charter schools are under the control, the not-for-profits, the local charter schools, and why don't we talk about public education having more magnet schools, because that's what a charter school is, except that a charter school here like Sarasota Military Academy or Arts and Science has their own board. They can raise money that can offset the cost, even though they still have to get money per student from the main public schools. So I think we're on the right path. It's just a matter of which one of us can get it done.
Alan, I would have to disagree with Mr. Pilon. If you look at his voting record, he voted in favor of increasing the voucher program back in 2012. He voted to make it easier for corporate charter schools to get construction funding, and he voted to exempt charter schools from certain reporting requirements that all other public schools have to have.
Let me tell you how that happens, because that's not unfair. That's not fair. Right. It's not fair. First of all, it shows that when you haven't been in the legislature and you don't know, except her last session, when the big budget comes out and that big education bill comes out, all of that stuff is wrapped up in there. I disagreed with many of the things that she just talked about. What I didn't disagree with is I don't disagree with scholarships for tax credits from private companies. She voted, one of the few votes that she had when she was there, she voted against on 7055, the House bill, voted against having students that have been physically and mentally abused in their schools being able to have a voucher, a scholarship to go to another school.
Right, let's move on to another issue while we have time here. And Ray, I know when you were in the legislature, you butted heads on occasion with the NRA. One of the first pieces of legislation Margaret did get to vote on was in the aftermath of Parkland, was the school safety bill. She voted against it because it did not, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it did not include a ban on assault weapons. Would you be for a ban on assault weapons in Florida?
Let's take it from the top. First of all, she voted against it. I'm sure that Marion Hammer with the NRA will probably like to send her a letter and thanking her for voting against it, because they were dead set against the 18-year-old background checks and ability to buy weapons. But to the heart of your question, I am for banning any weapon from a person that is going to use it unwisely to shoot somebody else because they had access to it, through which you could ban every assault weapon in the country, which, by the way, you can't do. So it's an unfair question. Would I be in favor of banning assault weapons? Banning them for who? The bad guys? Yeah. How are you going to do that for the bad guys? The underground and the black market for those weapons is very easy to get a hold of.
Margaret?
So the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Act was the bill that was the most discussed while I was there. We had a big special election win on February 13th. On February 14th, I got up at 4:45 in the morning and I drove up to Tallahassee to get sworn in. And minutes after I was sworn into office, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting happened. So it affected me, and I thought a lot about what we should do, because everyone wanted to do something. And then the legislature came up with this bill. I brought an amendment onto the House floor to require universal background checks, because that's one of those things where there's this great divide. 96% of Floridians want universal background checks. They think it's a good idea. Studies show that states that have universal background check requirements have fewer gun-related deaths. Yet our legislature won't do it. It was hotly contested, and it was ultimately voted down on party lines. This is the problem with our legislature. There is no working together. There is no common sense solutions. And if you look at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas bill, there are unfunded mandates in there, which we have seen play out in the Sarasota County School Board. They're trying to figure out how they're going to have the money to put armed personnel in every single school. And I am against arming educators.
I'll give you 15 seconds and then I have to take a commercial.
15 seconds. We have armed, trained people in our school system. The school system just got a grant, and if her side had won that vote, it wouldn't have been an unfunded mandate, it would be a no mandate. So why would you ever give away all $400 million?
All right, we have to take a quick break. Closing statements by the candidates when we return. Stay with us. we move on to closing arguments, and Ray, you get to go first.
Thank you, Alan, and I know we have a short time, but I want to thank you again for allowing us to do this. You've heard a debate tonight, and we've heard some fire going back and forth, but it has been civil, and I appreciate that. I have always been a person, and my record shows it, and the community knows it, a person that loves to put people before politics. I've crossed the line with my own party. I've worked with the Democrats, especially on juvenile justice and on health care, and has been very successful. We can attack each other, but whether it's red tide where I want to put an action plan in or somebody just wants to point fingers, I think we need a better attitude towards it. I also think that when we're talking about moving Florida forward, we know the past mistakes. We know what we have to do, and I'm willing to do it. We haven't talked about sanctuary cities. We haven't talked much about taxes, except now she says she doesn't want to raise her taxes. So it'll be interesting when her governor says, how are you going to vote, Ms. Good? And we haven't talked about Medicare for all. Those are serious issues, and I hope to talk about them to the public in the future.
Margaret?
Thank you.
Alan, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to everyone out there watching. Your vote on November 6th can really make a difference. We can work together to move Florida forward, or we can be stuck in the policies of the past. It is time to make a change in Florida. I will be a champion for a clean environment. I will work to fully fund our public education system, and I'll work to make sure that we have a robust economy that works for everyone while being a good steward of our tax dollars. In the end of the day, I'm going to do what's good for our families, what's good for actual Floridians, what's good for the environment, and at the end of the day, what's good for Florida. And I would so appreciate your support and your vote on November 6th.
Margaret and Ray, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.